The stairs of death, where prisoners were forced to carry granite blocks often weighing as much as 110 pounds, up 186 steps of the quarry in Mauthausen concentration camp. Exhausted prisoners often collapsed and fell on top of other prisoners, creating a horrific domino effect. 1942. South Korean soldier forcibly cuts a young man's hair in front of others during a nationwide crackdown on men with long hair and women wearing short skirts in South Korea. 1970s. Mossad operator and former SS Obersturmbannführer, Otto Skorzeny, confronts a photographer. 1960. He worked for Egyptian and Israeli secret services after the fall of the Nazis, established a Nazi organization in Spain, helped 600 former SS officers escape to Spain and Argentina. At his funeral, he received Hitler salutes by former SS officers who were attending. Unit 731 was a secret Japanese military unit during World War II that conducted brutal experiments on prisoners of war and civilians. They performed live vivisections, exposed subjects to infectious diseases, and tested biological weapons, leading to immense suffering and death. There is a museum dedicated to the history of Unit 731 location in China. On June 20, 1991, 46-year-old Harry Collinson was murdered live on TV by Albert Dryden. Dryden had gotten into a dispute with the council that Harry was a planning officer with. In 2017, Dryden was reported to have had a stroke and was released from prison on compassionate grounds. A humiliated woman cries out in rage and anguish as an older woman comforts her, while a mob surround them during an anti-Jewish pogrom. Lvov, July 1, 1941. A young man dumps condiments on top of 21-year-old college student Joan Mulholland, sitting beside her professor John Salter and fellow student Ann Moody at a lunch counter sit-in. Mississippi, May 28, 1963. Washington, D.C. Mayor Marion Barry is caught smoking illegal substances on a surveillance recording during an undercover FBI sting. 1990. After serving 6 months in prison, the incident did not end Barry's mayoral career. The Church of God with Signs Following photographed in the 1960s. A few Pentecostal churches still practice snake handling today by lifting venomous serpents and drinking poison as acts of faith. A bizarre, dangerous tradition rooted in a literal take on Mark 16:17-18. More than 60 people have died so far. New York City Mayor William J. Gaynor, moments after being shot in the throat by James J. Gallagher, a discharged city employee. Although William Gaynor quickly recovered, the bullet remained lodged in his throat for the next 3 years. August 1910. The interior of an inmate's barracks in a Soviet gulag, 1936 to 1937. They had separate prisons for women, men, and children. The men had double bunks with 2 men on each level, and certainly no pillowcases. Many of the old gulags are still there in the forests of Siberia. A missionary holds up the arm of a Congolese boy showing his hand has been severed in Belgian Congo in the 1890s. It was cut off by the Belgian militia working for King Leopold II of Belgium when the father of the boy failed to meet a work quota. The hands themselves became a type of currency. The Belgians were very stingy with ammunition, and they would ask their colonial troops to bring back the hands of people they had shot during reprisal missions. Children playing in a sandpit of blue asbestos in Wittenoom, Western Australia, 1957. They both lived up to the age of 36 and 38 from mesothelioma, a cancer that develops in the thin tissue that lines the lungs and other internal organs. The whole town had asbestos woven into it, from playgrounds to the roads. American comedian and actor John Belushi died at the age of 33 from substance abuse, as being transported from his bungalow in which he died to the LA coroner's office, 1982. Singer Kathy Smith admitted to injecting him with substances, ultimately leading to his death. She was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 15 months in prison for her actions. One of the 20,000 faces of Pol Pot's secret prison, codenamed S-21. Tagged, photographed, and documented at the prison, they were never seen again, likely tortured, forced to sign false confessions, and then executed by the Khmer Rouge, Cambodia, 1976 to 1979. When the Vietnamese army invaded in 1979, the S-21 prison staff fled, leaving behind thousands of written and photographic records. However, most of these were lost or destroyed. Captured Jewish women in Wesselényi Street, Budapest, Hungary, October 1944. The city was liberated 3 months later. American civil rights activist Clifford Vaughs being pulled between by the National Guard and demonstrators at a Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee protest in Cambridge, Maryland, in 1964. Polish uprising members interrogate SS member with his Lightning submachine gun. Produced by the Armia Krajowa, or Home Army, it was the only weapon mass-produced covertly in occupied Europe during World War II. Warsaw, 1944. One of the cells in Cell Block B in Alcatraz prison in San Francisco Bay, from which 3 prisoners escaped on June 12, 1962, showing the dummy head used during the escape to distract the guards. The 3 men plotted their escape for months, and it is believed they got on a raft made from homemade raincoats. The FBI concluded the inmates most likely drowned, however they have never been found. The famous prison was closed in 1963. A terrified Jewish woman, trying to protect herself from being beaten during the Lviv pogroms of 1941. Attracted by a gathered crowd, this man was horror-stricken to find out that the victim of an automobile accident was his own wife, Brooklyn, New York, 1936. A statue in the center of Stalingrad after Nazi airstrikes in the background. The airstrikes went on for 2 months, August 1942. In 1971, Soviet engineers set fire to a gas-filled hole in the Turkmenistan desert, thinking it would burn out in a few days. However, the flames have persisted, and the site, known as the Door to Hell, has been burning continuously for over 54 years. It is believed the site was drilled by Soviet engineers in search of oil. When the ground unexpectedly gave way, forming the crater, the engineers ignited the escaping gas in an attempt to burn it off, not realizing the supply was vast enough to keep the flames burning for decades. American naval aviator Lieutenant Everett Alvarez, who was shot down over North Vietnam during a bombing raid in 1964, with a North Vietnamese prison guard while in captivity, 1967. Pope Francis, then Jorge Mario Bergoglio, riding a bus in Argentina, 2008. Before he led the Catholic Church, Jorge worked as a nightclub bouncer and janitor in Argentina. He later became a priest, climbed the ranks, and in 2013 was named Pope Francis. American POWs stand for roll call in the courtyard of Nga Tu So Prison, Hanoi, North Vietnam, March 1973. An aging Rudolf Hess, a leading member of the Nazi Party, paces the courtyard of Spandau Prison. He ended up being the last prisoner there from 1966 to 1987. Then the prison was demolished and ground to dust. The dust was dumped into the sea to keep the place from becoming a shrine for neo-Nazis. Finally, it was turned into a parking lot for an Aldi's. The graffiti left at Frances Brown's apartment by the lipstick killer, William Hirons. Frances was found with a knife lodged in her neck and a bullet wound on the head, December 10, 1945. Civilians suffocated in the cellar of their home during a bombing by the Soviet-trained Afghan Air Force, Afghanistan, 1988. The Soviet command was applying collective responsibility to the Afghans suspected to supporting mujahideens, often bombed Afghan towns and villages without cause, or under the pretext that fighters were present there. A Cossack policeman, to the amusement of Hungarian soldiers, attacks a captured Soviet partisan with a saber. Occupied Ukraine SSR, September 1941. A young French woman aims a kick at a passing German prisoner on his way to confinement after being captured. France, September 26, 1944.